What's up, all you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? We're gonna talk about some third places today, but not the kind that I just learned about on TikTok a little while ago.
Ooh.
Ever-
Oh, that's the good thing, right?
Yeah, the good third places. I didn't know that was a thing.
I just
for a
when you
while.
said I learned about something on TikTok, I had a feeling that it was gonna be unsavory.
No, the thing that annoyed me the most about it was like I saw a video about third places, but they didn't. They were like talking about details about it.
Oh, sure. So they weren't like just generally like,
So they
where
didn't.
are they? What are they
They
supposed
didn't
to mean?
explain what it was. I'm like, what the fuck are these people talking about? And I had to
Yeah.
like do a bunch of digging to be like, oh, they just mean like a place you can go and not necessarily spend money. That's not your house or work.
Right, or at least like a very small amount of money that's like
Right.
a hangout spot
Mhm.
that's generally safe and like
Yeah.
not negative for your life.
Yeah, which I mean, it makes sense, but when you hear third place,
Yeah,
it's not the first thing that would come to mind,
No.
and the description of it was very like, how do you not know what this is already type of thing, and I'm like,
I mean, to be fair, I have heard about it for a
Uh-huh.
while now,
Uh.
but like, different internet for different folks. Huh?
yeah, that's definitely true. Spend a lot more time making shit for the internet than I do consuming stuff off of it.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I don't know what your odometer says at the end of the day, but like, or stepometer, whatever they're
Pedometer?
called.
Yeah, I don't have a pedometer, probably for good reason.
Yeah, your phone will tell you if you really want to know. I bet.
I don't care that much. But that's not the third places we're talking about.
No,
We're talking about third parties, which if they run an election will usually come in third place or
Yes.
fourth or fifth, depending on how many you've got going. And third party candidates, they get a fair amount of attention every election. Obviously, you're hearing about it this election with RFK Jr.
RFK seems to be the biggest right
Yeah.
now.
But you've always got the Gary Johnsons and the Ralph Naders, and
Yeah, I mean, there's a list like we have.
there
right
there
here.
is a list that we are about to get into, and it's one of those things that you always they're there to give people hope who hate the system that currently exists, right? I mean, like that's
Right. I mean, people are dissatisfied with either the two options or just the two parties in general. And they're like, well, I will do a protest vote and I will not vote for either candidate that sucks donkey butt. And I will try to make a voice for change.
which has clearly worked out great so far.
Yeah, not exactly.
We-
Not too much success
No,
for
no.
third-party candidates. Generally, though, they do have more success in non-presidential runs, state representatives, and just federal representatives have a little bit more luck. At least getting like closer to like second place.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Well, I mean, Bernie Sanders is a senator that is an independent. Kristen Sinema is now an independent, I
Right,
guess.
did not
you know?
run as an
Did not run.
independent, but I think Bernie's probably the most successful true independent. Ran as an independent.
Yeah.
Besides his Democratic.
For
runs.
President,
Right.
because he knows that a third party
Right.
candidate's never going to.
Yes, and that's
win.
why he's also supporting Joe Biden
Mhm.
because he knows he
Mhm.
plays into the duopoly of our party
Yeah.
system, which is not my least favorite thing about Bernie, but yeah, I guess I
mean, it's
understand it.
pragmatism.
It's
I mean, what are you
pragmatic,
gonna
yeah.
do? Because he's like, well, I do this or some more Donald Trump.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's a fair point, obviously.
But third party candidates, as much as I feel like we feel like they're a new thing, maybe not a new thing, but like a our lifetime thing. They've been around a very long time.
They're
I
just
mean,
fresh, You
Yeah.
sometimes you haven't heard of them.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're just saying some things that like really give you some hope,
Mhm.
and like they just don't usually say the same shit over and over and over again. And so when people hear them, they're like, "Huh, that's a unique, interesting voice that's saying things that are good."
Yeah.
So let's
Mhm.
talk about it. Even though there's basically, well, not basically, there's like a 99.99% chance that they won't even make a difference.
Right.
But
There's a 99.9% chance they won't even end up on the ballot in all the states.
right, yeah, much less. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
obviously there are some potential, spoiler type effects that third parties
Mm-hmm.
may or may not have to certain extents, but we'll definitely we'll touch on
Right.
that later.
I think it's worth noting though because like Democrats and Republicans um aren't that wasn't what our country was founded on, having those two parties, and
No,
we've
the
had a
founding fathers
mm-hmm,
despised the party system,
mm-hmm.
um, while also unfortunately creating
The
a
system that would
the
only end in a party system
right, a
pretty much.
democratic system that largely leans to creating two different in groups that
Mm-hmm.
fight over topics. So,
Uh-huh.
um,
But there was a lot of different parties over the years, and it really wasn't until the Civil War that we got galvanized
mhm.
into the two parties. I mean, before that, I don't know, we had Whigs and Democratic Republicans at one point,
Yeah,
and
motherfucking Southern. Fuck, what is the Hamilton quote? Motherfucking seven. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up. My wife is probably she's gonna
she
cringe right now that I don't know the quote.
I've only seen it once, so I
Southern Democratic Republicans. Those motherfucking Southern Democratic Republicans. Like it's a thing. It's like
it's a thing. Yeah. Um
it's a song. Let's
so
move
so
on.
that was a thing. So not a third party at the time.
No.
Like I said, we didn't really get galvanized until the Civil War into Democrats and Republicans. But basically since then, we've had third party candidates pretty much right out of the gate since
Right?
after Reconstruction. And a lot of people don't know that Teddy Roosevelt was a third party
Yeah.
candidate.
Didn't he do that before? Or no, that was his after his
After.
presidency. Yeah, he
Hmm.
tried to run again because
Uh,
he disliked who took over for him. That was that
uh,
Gerald
was it
Ford?
Taft? I
Taft.
don't
It might have been
remember.
Taft, but he was very
He was.
displeased at what they were
Mhm.
doing. So he's like, "Well, I'm coming back, baby."
Yeah, Bull Moose Party.
Yeah.
It didn't go well.
No.
And then Strom Thurmond. That was during the civil. Well, from the 1940s. It was through the duration of the civil
Mm.
rights era. He was a staunch Southern Democrat. Back before the party switch that never happened.
Right.
Uh,
Never happened.
mm-hmm. And then he was unhappy with Harry Truman, being the Democratic nominee, because these were Northern Democrats,
Sure.
and Northern Democrats didn't make racism a primary party platform.
How dare they?
Uh-huh. And the Southern Democrats weren't very happy about it. So Strom tried to thwart Truman's election by creating the Dixiecrat Party.
Yeah.
And that didn't go well, and
Nope.
then he whined and cried for a while, and then he eventually just became a Republican, and a bunch of the other Southern Democrats followed him. Eugene Debs, the most successful socialist Party
Yeah,
candidate.
you got a couple percentage on the
Mm-hmm.
presidential vote, which is saying
Yeah.
something. Was it? It wasn't double digits, but it was like
No.
mid single digits, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So like better than a lot of modern day
Mm-hmm.
third party candidates.
And this was right around the turn of the century too. I forget what election he ran in here, but
1910s ish.
yeah, something like that. Election. 1912 election, yeah.
Ah, nice.
So, look at you go.
I know a little bit of history.
So that I mean, so like it's not a new thing. Like obviously people have been unhappy with the two-party system since we've had a two-party system, and unhappy with the party systems that we had in the past, which is why we ended up with Republicans, because that was the they were unhappy with the party system that we had, and they started a new party, and
Yep.
back in the day when a new party could apparently win a
Yeah,
national
well,
election.
it's crazy how that's possible when you don't have like giant corporate interests that back only one or the other, or
Mhm.
they have so much backing that it leads to that conglomeration.
Yep. Um. So there's a lot. Vermin Supreme, one of our all time
I
favorites
had
too.
not ever
You've
heard of.
never heard of Vermin
No,
Supreme?
I should have looked it up. To be honest, I don't think I actually saw his name when you put him
On
on
the
the list
list.
here.
Vermin Supreme. He's a satire candidate. He's never like
Oh,
made
got it.
an official bid, but he runs like every year, and he wears a boot on his head.
Okay, I think I have maybe
Uh
seen this
huh.
guy before, but
Mm-hmm.
as quickly as his picture entered some screen in my mind is as fast as I forgot about him.
Yeah. He's been around a while. And as much he's definitely a satire candidate. I mean, obviously
Yeah, I mean
he's
you can't wear a boot on your head and like seriously. Like, I mean, maybe you can if you're actually a little
Just looking
bit.
at the state of American politics, I've seen crazier shit now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but despite that, he's still speaking to what the motivations are for why people want third party candidates, why third party candidates run. And what are some of those reasons? Like why do we have third party candidates, and why do they get any attention at all?
Well, generally because at least modern day
Mhm.
speaking, there's just a lot of discontent with our current politicians, current
Mhm.
systems, and generally people like I said before, are using their vote to vote for a third party as a protest vote against the system.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, it yeah, there's
hasn't really worked
no.
as a protest vote.
Mhm.
The only thing I will say about a protest vote that could potentially mean anything
Mhm.
is that if a candidate or party gets enough of the votes in the prior election,
Yeah.
they are eligible for federal um, funding.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, if like I don't know, it still doesn't make sense for our current
Mhm.
system, but like at least you could be like, well, they're a new party and we want them to get like federal funding so they can do more stuff on the national stage and more like representative.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I get that. I get that to a degree. I think so it comes down a lot to ideology, and either current candidates aren't fitting with your ideology, which I mean, if
Right.
if your if your ideology fits within either one of our political parties today, you probably need to reassess your ideologies.
Right. I mean, to look at how much people are disliking Joe Biden right now and
Mhm.
how many people obviously hate Trump, because that's
Mhm.
it's really easy to do. He really just
He's
hands
got he's got
over.
one of those hateable faces, you know?
It's also the
and
hair.
and
It's
and
like
and voice. And
and
the hand motions,
yeah, yeah. There's pretty much everything about him.
yeah,
It
it's
just
just
leans
the
to that.
color, that
The
orange hue.
usually don't hate people on the basis of their skin color, but he kind of just like
Huh?
gets that vibe off.
Mhm.
Um, so if you look at our 2024 election and you're like, well, fucking Joe Biden, the way he's handling Palestine and Israel right now fucking blows. He's been only about minorly supportive of unions to some
Mhm.
extent. And like, I think the infrastructure bill, Build Back Better was really good step in the right direction, but nowhere near his promise of like true climate change
Right.
initiatives and
Mhm.
doing anything for that.
Yeah. Willow
Um,
Project was not great
right.
on the
The
whole climate change
yeah,
project.
signing more drilling, approvals on the federal level than any other presidency in recent years
Mhm.
didn't help that. So, like, there's a lot you could say that neither one of these two candidates is anything that people. I think that most of America
Mhm.
agrees that they're doing a great job or
You know,
would do a great job.
And so I think a lot of times when third party candidates run, especially when you see like the Ralph Naders and
Hmm.
the Jill Steins and Gary Johnsons, they're a lot of times doing it for their own ideologies,
Yeah.
which is respectable to an extent, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for shifting the Overton window, and we
Mhm.
saw it with Bernie Sanders and universal health care
Mhm.
in the 2016 election, and basically all of the candidates on the Democratic Party basically saying that they, started off not mentioning universal health care at all, Bernie coming out strong, and
Mhm.
everybody kind of being like, yeah, 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 I actually
I
would
guess yeah,
support
we
that.
can I'm not opposed to it. We can talk about it like, maybe,
Right, yeah, in the way
Medicare for all who want it.
I support it,
Yeah,
like,
uh-huh.
okay, you
Mhm.
support it, sure, sure.
Yeah. Um
Like the
but
Overton window shift,
mhm.
like there's something to be said about it.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. Uh
But
there is occasionally though when some candidates like I was mentioning with Strom Thurmond earlier, uh that a lot of times, not a lot of times, but occasionally their entire goal is to sabotage another candidate.
sure.
Which is what Strom Thurmond's stated goal was when he ran against Truman as a
Hmm,
Dixiecrat, was to split the Democratic vote, to get him to
right,
lose, to send a message to the Democratic Party that we will not be ignored down here in the South with hating the Browns.
right.
And I think especially right now, it's something that we need to be sort of aware of.
Yeah, right. I mean, when you consider that there's no way a third party candidate gets even remotely close to 10% of the
Mhm.
vote, but still could get a couple percent.
Mhm.
And sometimes, if you looked at the last like 4 out of 5 elections, you could
Mhm.
say, that couple million votes.
Especially depending on the state. I mean, you look at what Ralph Nader did in Florida,
Right.
and there's obviously arguments to be had either way of if Ralph Nader, is responsible for giving us the Bush. But
Right.
uh
Which I've heard a lot of people argue that the spoiler effect is only like um a minor actually
influence.
concern. Yeah,
Mhm.
because their argument is that most of the people who vote for that independent or third party person,
Mhm.
they were not really truly in the voting pool to begin
Mhm.
with, potentially, and that they would have not voted at all if that person hadn't been running. So I don't know how much, it's hard to prove
It
that.
is. It is.
I think there's probably some truth to that.
I'd agree. I think in most cases, like I don't think that Ralph Nader really made a difference in any previous election.
No.
I don't think
Right.
that Jill Stein contributed to giving us Donald Trump in any significant way.
Mhm.
Um, I I obviously Strom Thurmond didn't succeed in unseating Harry
Mhm.
Truman.
Yeah.
Uh, but in that case, especially in Florida, when it came down to that few votes, and Ralph Nader had uh, ex- a much larger portion than what was, it was like I don't know, six, I don't remember. It was a large amount of votes that Ralph Nader got in Florida.
Oh, in Florida
In
specifically.
Florida specifically, and
Got
Florida
it.
was the deciding factor. And so, like,
Right, as it turns out.
when it comes down to, it's a few hundred votes that the election was decided by, and
Yeah.
so, and it only had to be 5 or 10% of Ralph Nader's votes had to go, and Ralph Nader's voters, if they were going to go either way, would have more likely went to Gore than Bush
Right.
had they not had the Ralph Nader option.
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
and so, like, so I
At
think,
least a decent enough of them.
right.
Decent enough portion of them.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that in that specific scenario, the spoiler effect, and maybe the only time in our history, but the spoiler
Sure.
effect is real. But as we get closer, because that was, I think that was the first time that the popular vote and the electoral vote did not align. Was that election?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. That sounds probable. Possible.
I'm fairly certain that that was the first time. in our history that and I could be wrong. There could be some time,
Sure.
back in the day, but it was not it's not something that happened on any type of regular basis
Mm.
prior to that. And then, since then, uh Donald Trump was elected on the same premise that he lost the popular vote by a considerable margin
Mm-hmm.
and still won the electoral vote.
Yeah.
And so it's when you're getting it that close, and I think that's part of the reason why the spoiler effect was downplayed so much, is because
Mm.
in the past you had generally a significant enough difference where even had it had never come down to one single state
Right.
with
In
this few
like
number of
1,000
votes,
votes or something like that.
where this other candidate got enough votes that likely would have had a significant portion go to the other candidate that
Right. That is
lost.
a pretty
Hmm.
specific set of
Hmm.
circumstances. And I would, yeah, I'd probably yield to you and say that, yeah, for sure. In that instance,
Hmm.
probably the only presidential spoiler.
Hmm.
Certainly there's been,
Oh,
I would,
yeah, down ballot
uh,
for.
right. Yeah.
Hmm.
State representatives and, federal,
Yeah, those come down to
congressmen.
tens of votes all the
Right.
time.
So
And
I can totally see
hmm.
how a spoiler could affect that. But due to the duopoly of our
Hmm.
of our parties for presidential candidates, it is usually pretty small effect. I see you have George Wallace. Which he's my man.
He's your man. Well, let's talk about some George Wallace.
I don't think it's not going to be great with this what you have here.
What do you want to say about George Wallace?
Well, okay. Probably the most progressive candidate we've had since FDR
Yep.
and then since Bernie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of great things I would say about that. But it looks like you have in here, he had some racial apprehension with something to do with black people. I tried to do a little bit of research. I couldn't find like a ton. But what did you find? What do you got?
Hold on a sec here. Where are we at?
Sure. Iowa Corn Man, Pioneer Corn, Pioneer Seeds. If you have time, look up George Wallace. He's got some really amazing speeches um, that I think if you're progressive, you would enjoy. If you don't know that much about him, I highly recommend checking him out.
George Wallace, right here, during the Civil Rights Movement, declaring in his 1963 inaugural address that he stood for segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
Right. He was saying that the South had been sort of doing its thing for so long and doing pretty good
Mm-hmm.
that they should be left alone and allowed to do what they wanted to do, which was segregation, and that black people were fine enough on their own and segregated, and they'd be better off segregated. I think that's what he was saying.
And so you didn't feel like that was a
I
not racially not a racial issue.
no, it definitely is. I just it hurts to see somebody that like I haven't found a ton that I'm like George Wallace sucks. This is like the one of the few things that
Mm-hmm.
that I think he is like completely wrong on.
Right, but that's why he split from the party.
Sure.
So this was during the party switch, but he didn't switch enough to go Republican. He just switched to independent
Mhm.
to run on a segregationist platform.
Yeah, which is it's just baffling to me. But I don't know. What are you gonna do? Nobody's
He claimed though that he was a segregationist, not a racist. He put that out there.
yeah.
He's like, I don't have a problem with black people just as long as they're not in the same area as me.
Right. Well, I
Just don't want to look at them.
I don't know a ton, but from what I could find, it sounded like what he was saying was that the southern states and southern economies and everybody who's living there
Mm-hmm.
would be better off being segregated, not that he thought that they ought to be like segregated on the basis of their race.
Um,
But that's besides the point. Either way, it's a really shitty take, and I die a little bit every time I hear about.
I can
my
keep going with
heroes.
this. Desegregation, he wrote, would lead to intermarriage, and eventually our race would be deteriorated
All right, fuck
to
it.
that of the mongrel complexity.
All right, you got me. I have not seen that. Fucking George Wallace, man.
Hey, I'm just on Wikipedia, you know, at the moment. I'm doing.
Wikipedia is usually right
Mhm.
nowadays.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's kind of baffling to me is if you looked it up, obviously I'm looking on the fly here.
I've looked up I do a lot of my research on YouTube and about creators who do a lot of their research, and obviously I don't take everything what they say at face value.
Right.
But I didn't see a lot of them talk about stuff like that, so I didn't go to his Wikipedia page and try to look for stuff to make him look bad necessarily. But
No, I get that. I just
it was right there.
yeah, I was just reading through third party candidates, and honestly, before writing up the write up for this episode, I didn't know a ton about George Wallace. But
FDR's VP for 8 years.
yeah, no, I mean I knew that, and I may have even done a vice presidential episode on him as vice president, but not as an independent party candidate. And I don't think he talked. I mean, it's as vice presidents, they were fucking useless. Nobody talked about him anyway back then, so there wasn't a ton of this is my position on things sort of thing. Here's because he ran 3 or 4 times.
Did he?
I think 3 times. Yeah, third presidential run. And when in 1968 when he ran, and that was really the big party switch year. That was know after the Civil Rights Act got passed, the Democrats got really pissed with LBJ. He won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 states, all in the South.
Yikes.
Yeah. So Florida flipped Republican, Texas stayed Democrat. The rest of those southern seaboard states and Mississippi, so what is it? Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana. They all voted Wallace, and I don't think they were
a good sign.
No. So so while I was reading through this on this, that's why I put that in in the notes was that seems to be the only reason he went third party was that. And I think as a vice president, and again, a lot of his economic policy, I think a lot of his domestic policy was really good, really on point.
Yeah, I mean up until this moment, that's all I really knew about him, to be fair. I didn't even really look at his presidential runs, other than I just knew that he ran for president again. Didn't really look at his platform. I just assumed it was mostly pro labor platform and pro education being affordable and stuff. So are we talking about the St. George Wallace?
No, we're not.
Because
Holy shit. You thought we were talking about
Oh, I thought my whole life was being split outside.
That's why I was so confused. I'm how did you not know this about the George Wallace who ran for president?
Yeah.
And I should have been tipped off when you said FDR's, because I'm I know I did a.
Oh my gosh,
and that's not even George Wallace.
Isn't it? Its name's George Wallace. There's 2 George Wallaces.
Henry Wallace.
Fuck. George and Henry are the same name.
My fucking God, man. This entire time we've been, and that's why I'm wait, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm yeah, Wallace was FDR's VP, but it wasn't fucking
Wallace.
George.
Okay. My bad, people. I am so sorry.
I need to start this whole episode all over. My God.
Maybe we check that out.
No. This
it's just too confusing.
We've come too far. You said you wanted to be home before dinner. We got.
God damn it.
I want to know how many of you have been yelling at your screen this entire time.
Yeah.
Or your earphones or whatever the hell you're listening to.
Who the fuck is this guy supporting George Wallace so fucking much? Henry Wallace, my friends.
Henry Wallace was a great politician, great candidate. George Wallace was a piece of shit. I was trying to give you the
Yes.
benefit of the doubt on that one, and then
And I was talking about like his whole like labor and progressive like stuff, and you're like, George Wallace was a progressive?
like so confused.
All right. Well, my world is not shattered anymore.
That's
The pieces have been glued back together.
Yes, Henry Wallace was a great man. I've never done anything on George Wallace. I did something on Henry Wallace.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now that we
moving
got
on.
that straightened out.
Let's continue. Ross Perot. Who's that guy?
I don't know. Ross Perot was Donald Trump before Donald Trump, but less of an idiot.
Yeah, wasn't he like a millionaire?
Yeah, he was.
But like an actual millionaire, not like a Donald Trump millionaire.
No, he had real money that he could release his tax returns and prove that he had.
Right. Yeah.
And he was so he was super rich.
Was he like a Mike Bloomberg, but like 20 years ago? 30?
Yeah, 30, 40 years ago now.
I don't know what year it is.
It's I know, we're getting fucking old, man. No, so he was a rich businessman, and like most rich businessmen, he thought that he could do everything better than everybody else. 1992 presidential election. Yeah,
I've never heard of a CEO having a conflated sense of self before.
I mean, who knows? If he was around today, he could probably save Twitter.
I mean, he can't make it worse. Can't make it worse.
And so I think he had fairly good intentions, but very out of touch intentions.
Well, as you would imagine, being a CEO, a little bit out of touch.
And his lack of qualifications, he thought, was his best quality because the outsider complex. When it comes to Washington.
It prevails as always.
But he was pretty successful. A lot of people got on, and they liked that he told it how it was and stuff. Thankfully, I mean, he wasn't running as like a gigantic racist or anything, which was cool. It was just
that's a good start.
Yeah, he was very much like a Ron Paul kind of energy.
Sure. Yeah,
just a non-career politician, Ron Paul type libertarian. Yeah, just not great. Let's just don't elect rich people. Like we could Jim Bob from the trailer park. Let's go with him,
Right. And so I looked it up. He is the most successful presidential third candidate is what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
At least as far as like overall votes.
Yeah.
20 million votes.
That's very impressive,
Right.
honestly.
19%. The strongest third party showing since 1912, I guess, since Eugene Debs.
Mm-hmm. Who was the most successful third-party candidate to that point,
right, up to that point.
and the most successful Socialist Party candidate ever.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I think I qualified that in the first one, but speaking of which, so 92, so that was Clinton's first election, and Clinton defeated an incumbent president in a okay-ish economy. And I don't know how it broke down, but we were talking about the spoiler stuff in the beginning, and wondering if 20 million votes is a lot.
Yeah, heck yeah, that's a lot.
The problem is though that 20 million votes is a lot, but if they are spread out really thin, and I think that's what it was. I do think I already looked this up, and they were spread out really evenly.
Yeah, he didn't win a single state.
No. So to get 20 million votes and not win a single state is
yeah. I mean, that's interesting. It's really. It shows that populism has its place, just not its place in the presidency.
No.
Unless you count Trump,
Mm-hmm.
which I would count that almost like the anti-popularist to some extent.
Yeah, so I think, and then the thing with Ross Perot too is he he appealed to both sides almost equally, in the discontented third party voters, because libertarians, I mean, that's the conservative-ish
Right.
third party, especially back then before we had all these
Right.
Tea Party and MAGA
Constitution
idiots
parties
and yeah, all that shit. So he appealed to them from that, the libertarian side, and he appealed uh to people on the left for the more social side, I think. And so
Sure.
everything I read on him is that it was very unlikely that even despite his huge numbers that he pulled, had he not been there, they would have sort of diverged back to their own parties or not voted.
Yeah, so Bill Clinton won with
Mhm.
43%, George Bush with 37.5%.
Mhm.
So I don't know how you split up 19%. If you have to give
But then
basically all that to Bush
right.
in order for him to
Well,
have a
but
lead.
you don't, because again, the way the electoral college was, had he
Well.
performed really well in specific states,
Sure.
and had George Bush lost in those states, then you could argue that it was a spoiler. But I don't. There was no one or two states that were
Right,
close.
yeah,
that
there was
George,
no electoral
Mhm.
college votes that would have been given to Bush if Ross
Mhm.
Perot hadn't been.
and that's
Well,
and
maybe, unless Clinton. Um,
it's hard to say, but
I
it's
don't know.
really
Yeah.
unlikely. I don't think
Yeah.
Ross Perot really affected, and that's interesting that not a single electoral vote, while being the most popular third party candidate, popular vote wise,
Right.
in history.
Yeah, that shows you the crazy kind of control the two major parties have over our system,
Mhm.
mainly based on the electoral college,
Yeah.
as well as the winner take all system, where states, you have
Yeah.
to win. If you win the state at any level, then you
Right.
get all the votes.
Oh, and we've talked about this before, but yeah, it's like 40 something percent of people in California vote Republican,
Right.
and a high 40% of people in Texas vote Democrat. But those are the two biggest states with the most electoral votes, and half those people's votes in those
Are
states
nullified. They mean nothing.
Yeah, they're worthless.
Well,
So
it's
your
like
vote your
voting-
vote literally doesn't count if
It's
you're
like-
voting against that in those states, because
It's like voting Republican in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's never made a difference
Mhm.
for a presidential election.
Uh-huh.
So it's pretty. I obviously we
Mhm.
can't stand it, but it's just baffling to me, and it's baffling to me. Not just me. I had something. I almost put a Bill Maher quote in here.
Oh,
About- I
God.
can't stand the guy anymore, but like he made this point of like it's funny that Americans like have like their big thing is like we have choice, so much choice in
Mhm.
America, and yet we're okay with just two parties.
Yeah, we have no choice in this
Right.
country. What the fuck happened to Bill Maher?
He went down like I don't know, like the because he was a comedian, and I think
Mhm.
it was like the PC like cultures type of stuff that like drove him insane, and he just
Mm.
could not handle that like people were like trying to be a
Critical
little bit
of
sensitive to
Mhm.
people's mental beings and
Yeah.
and health. So and like saying like, hey, like you shouldn't say like that's gay and stuff
Mhm.
like that. I think that just like broke his brain, and that's where
I
he's
just-
at today.
I never understood it, because I mean, I think a lot of us used to be like, yeah, Bill Maher. Like, I mean, back when he was a comedian, I
Yeah.
liked his comedy, and then he started doing a talk show for some fucking reason. I guess a lot of comedians do that, but
Right.
and I don't know. To me, it always felt like trying to be edgy in the most dull way possible.
Yeah, he does like give the vibe like he feels like he's on the cutting edge of something,
Mhm.
but like just says the most boomer thing right
Uh-huh.
afterwards. So at this point, I only watch him to see what he will say, in the sense that I don't think it's going to be good in any way.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. He's I feel like I don't even know what to compare him to. 'Cause, like, I feel like he's like the Democrat Ben Shapiro, but he's not even that. 'Cause, like, he's not even peddling the
No.
Democrat line, and he
No.
like still pretends to be one, but
Right.
like
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, I don't it's just-
Enough. Yeah.
enough about
Enough about Bill Maher.
Um,
Whatever.
So then, one thing I've noticed too about third party candidates is the vast majority of the time, um, at least I feel like it's the vast majority of the time, they tend to be more progressive leaning. Like they're unhappy with the spectrum of political options that we have, and they're like, hey, we want this change. We want more workers' rights. We want more civil rights. We want less capitalism fucking everybody over. Like all
Right.
of that. Uh and it makes sense because you've got the Republican Party is a lot more cohesive. Like the conservative ideals is just like, hey, we want everything to be the way it was. I mean, that's what conservatism means, right?
Right.
Like you want
Well, it's easier to tear ideas down than it is
Mhm.
to create them.
Right.
So, like,
And then in a two-party system, we've got everybody being like everybody who isn't that.
mhm.
eh, What's your other option? And you're like, cool, you get to be a Democrat. So, we've got straight up communists and whatever, and then we've
Right.
got, you know, moderate Democrats, which are Republicans from the 70s.
Right.
And that it runs the entire gamut of political ideologies, and I think that that's why the left is a lot more prone to having third party candidates that
Oh, and infighting, I think, to a certain
oh,
extent.
absolutely, which we will do a whole episode on that too, because some of y'all could not handle me being like, Mayor Pete has some issues.
Right. I saw that and I was like, yeah, he worked for one of the worst corporations that's ever existed in our country. That seems like a fair thing to point out.
Yeah.
It's not even like controversial
No, just
thing.
like
You're not saying like, oh, he's a darn gay guy and he'll never do anything good. You're just like, nah, like he just like kind of chilled out a little bit.
mhm,
And not to say like we and ourselves, like if
mhm.
somebody was going to offer us six figures
Right.
to do something, I
Mhm.
don't know, like
But
we're
then if I ran for president after doing that, I'd be like, yeah, sure, that's a valid thing to criticize me
yeah,
for
yeah,
because I
exactly. Like
definitely sold out.
it definitely at some point, even if it was for a short time, you'd be like,
Mhm.
that is accurate. That's 100%
Uh-huh.
correct. And you can try to justify it, and you can try
Yeah.
to say like, oh, I needed the money, whatever, blah blah
Mhm.
blah.
But he didn't even do that. He's like, "No, I have an NDA. I can't. I helped a grocery store in Canada." That was his whole thing. He's like, "There was a grocery store in Canada that I helped figure out grocery prices. That was one of my favorite things about working there, but I can't talk about any of my other clients cuz I have an NDA."
Yeah,
And it's like, that you're not helping your case here, man.
I think that was like a story he made up in
Mhm.
order to be like, yeah, like that's what happened. Trust me,
Yeah.
and that's why you can talk about it.
It's like the price of milk. That's what I helped figure out was what the price of milk should be in
Right.
Canada.
Yeah, they couldn't have done that before him,
No.
but because of him, they got it just right.
And so, uh, oh man, wow, that threw me off. I just still could not believe the backlash I got from that fucking
That
video.
was yeah. I mean, it's just people commenting on TikTok,
It is,
so
it
like,
is, but I'm like, I'm used to it because I mean, I do this, I make one of these videos every week, and I mean, granted, a lot of times it's Republicans, and everybody's like, yeah, fuck those guys, and the
yeah,
people who aren't like that, I'm like, yeah, well, fuck you, because obviously I have a platform here that's geared a certain direction, but like
right,
I've made critical videos of other Democrats in the past, and
yeah,
like
yeah,
nobody got so like tribal with it as they did
yeah.
with Mayor Pete.
That was weird
It
because
was.
I didn't even say anything that bad. Like you didn't
Mm-mm.
even like you just criticized him for facts.
Mm-hmm. It's like I'm not a huge fan of him. I'm coming at it like this is still my personal opinion on the guy and
Right.
why I have this personal opinion based on these facts. And they were
That's the wrong opinion to have
eh,
based off those facts, man.
apparently.
It's
Um.
okay that he did that. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
it means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even worry about it.
All right. But we're gonna do that in a different episode.
Yeah.
So, oh, this is where I was getting at with this shit though. Is it makes a lot of sense why the third parties tend to be on the left side of the political spectrum is because, like, a lot of us on the left side, I on the left side of the political spectrum am unhappy with the Democratic Party and a
Of
lot of the
course.
things
Yeah.
that they're doing. And so that's why you see it, and that's why it gets frustrating a lot of times when we have third party candidates is because they're taking away from it's like, they could possibly be giving us a George Bush where the
Mhm.
right doesn't have to worry about that. as often.
Right. Definitely not as often.
But libertarians are kind of the exception a little
Yeah, I
bit
mean,
to that rule.
libertarians do spoil some more localized elections for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There was one recently. Was it in Arizona? I don't know, but like
Mm-hmm.
it definitely is pretty recently that it happens for candidates.
No, and I think libertarians do still pull from left leaning voters a lot because I mean,
Yeah.
again, and we've talked about this before, but the libertarian sales pitch, the elevator pitch,
Right.
is pretty good. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you know, gay people should be able to protect their weed plants with guns, and like that
Right.
sounds great to people who are like social liberty. But then it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, but if they're sick, they should die in the gutter. Like that's
if they don't have enough money to
Uh-huh.
buy healthcare.
If they can't build their own personal hospital, like
Right.
fuck them.
Yeah.
They can fuck all the way off. And that's and also they could be sick because other rich people decided that they should pollute their drinking water, and that's those rich people's rights to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So they definitely pull because they libertarians are, Republicans that are okay with gay sex and weed, and that's
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that.
so they do tend to pull I think a little heavier from the Republican side,
Yeah.
but um that's really the only one that I've seen, except for now we're kind of getting more of the extreme right, but they tend to be trying to take over and reform the party from within rather than run as a third party.
Yeah. I didn't see any. I don't know.
'Cause
Why would you? Also, it's like a weird election year
Mhm.
because why would you go third party when there's so many when there's availability in the Republican side? It's like if
Mhm.
you're leaning Republican, you might as well try to run as a Republican.
Mhm.
So like, why go as an independent in a year that has an open season on the primary candidate?
Yeah. Uh,
But
because a guy who is currently indicted is probably going to win because he's leading with like what 60 or 70% or 60
yeah,
points.
the polling is the weirdest thing right now. It's been the weirdest thing since Donald Trump started. It's never recovered.
No, it really hasn't.
But
Um,
yeah, I mean, let's look at some of the candidates we have
mhm.
that are kind of big. Obviously, we've got RFK, Robert Kennedy Jr. He is like an enigma. I've got some buddies that are really really into him. I
But he's on what side?
He was trying to run as a Democrat.
No, I know, but Buddy's on what are you, what? Because I know you got some conservative friends.
Oh yeah. The buddy that really likes him is more of like a independent. He kind of goes either way depending on
Okay.
the issue,
Mhm.
which fits RFK
Yeah, it
because
does.
he's all over the place with his views. I would like to say like he's got the only like the biggest things that I like about him is that he is or and has been an environmental activist.
Mhm.
I don't know that he would change a ton more for climate change than like what the normal Democrat status quo would be. And then the other is his like vitriol hatred of corporations and
Mhm.
like corporate backing for candidates. And so those are the things I like. Obviously, there's some things that I don't like. He's got some pretty. He really rides that conspiracy theory line. He crosses over a fair amount, but like he definitely like rides that like Joe Rogan train of like the
Yeah.
COVID vaccines and just vaccines in
Mhm.
general. And I've tried. I listened to a bunch of his podcasts because his buddy's
Mhm.
like, "Hey, listen to this one. Like, this is really good." And like, he does a decent job of like deflecting. Like,
Mhm.
he went out and said like, this is what I personally believe about
Mhm.
vaccines, but like, I don't want to talk about it like with you. Like, I don't. I'm only talking about it because you brought it up, kind of thing. And I'm like, well, we kind of need to know
Yeah,
what you're
like
gonna do
there's
when you're the president, man. Like, if you are gonna say like, in his a part of his big thing was like vaccine like research and
Mhm.
like pharmaceutical companies have very little oversight and
Yeah.
like creation of vaccines,
Mhm.
and it's just he was just like getting really deep in the weeds in this stuff, and I was like, okay, like if what you're saying is even partially true, it's like
Mhm.
okay, like we should probably look into like how vaccines are tested, and like because it sounds like there's not enough testing.
Mhm.
And I generally tend to agree that pharmaceutical companies will push anything as fast as they can,
No,
and
absolutely.
skimp on the
Mhm.
testing. But then he also will say like you like COVID wasn't like the thing, the COVID
A
vaccine.
real thing. Yeah, like uh uh yeah.
I want to like him. He seems like a fairly likable dude, and
He's you got to imagine the dude had his like uncle and dad fucking yeeted into the next life
yeah,
when he
forcefully so.
yeah.
And
um
he's got some pretty interesting takes on the
and
CIA.
and there's a lot of conspiracies about both of their deaths.
Right. And I mean, I think the CIA is shady as
Oh
fuck.
fuck
Like, there
yeah.
is nothing more shady about the United States government than the CIA. And
Mhm.
would I put it past the CIA to do the things that he says? I wouldn't put it past him.
Mm-mm.
But
But like the problem and like I agree. Like we could get into I would be happy doing a whole episode on government conspiracies
yeah,
because
sure.
I
I actually don't know like a ton of them, but
oh
like,
I because a lot of them are declassified, like this
right,
is common knowledge type
sure,
stuff, and I mean it's fucked up stuff, right?
right, right,
um but like we definitely have to do an episode on media literacy and like
right.
understanding how to debunk a conspiracy. But before that, which is
Yes.
why I've never really talked about this on my channel, uh but like the problem is like once you start to buy into these conspiracies and get invested, which obviously he has a lot of real emotional reasons to be invested in these conspiracies, and there
Yeah.
is some reasonable legitimacy to them.
Yeah.
And you really want to start believing that stuff.
Right.
That sets you on, you hate to say slippery slope, but
It
then
does kind of put you down the pipeline of some of these, like
uh-huh.
Joe Rogan, especially now, is like just pure like
Mhm.
right wing pipeline at this point
Mhm.
because COVID broke him.
Nope.
Um,
And it's just so I mean the fact that RFK lasted as long as he did, honestly, before going full. He's also had some pretty bad drug issues, some not great relationship issues. Like
yeah, yeah,
he's not a healthy person, let's say.
yeah.
And I'm
My buddy still sends me the TikTok of him doing like 5 push-ups and was like, I bet Joe or Trump couldn't do that. I'm like, you know what? He's 20 years younger than Joe Biden, so probably yeah, you're correct
woo,
there.
5 push-ups.
Well, okay, like they were
Right,
maybe
no.
it was like 8, but it was definitely not like it was definitely not like 30 push-ups or anything. It was like probably like 10 maybe tops
I also feel
push-ups.
like that's a weird thing. Like, look, you should elect me president. I
Well,
can do some light
it's even
exercise.
weirder because he did it shirtless. I think it was on like the beach in California or something, so like maybe it made sense. But he was wearing like jeans and no shirt, and it was just um, didn't feel like it had much to do with him
Yeah,
running as
yeah.
president.
I don't know. So I really do think that I think the man's he's desperate for attention. He always has been desperate for attention.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
he's
I mean, I think he has definitely played into like the Kennedy name to a
yeah,
certain extent for
which
most of his
I mean
career, which
can get you a long ways if
right,
you're. I
yeah.
mean that's the closest thing to Washington royalty as you're gonna get is the
Yeah.
Kennedy family.
Unfortunately, his family doesn't think he's a good fit for the
No.
presidency either. So it's kind of like like if you had the whole Kennedy like family
Mhm.
behind him, and
Mhm.
like
Well,
they
but
haven't,
he has no experience in politics. I mean, besides the
yeah,
fact that some of his family members were murdered in Washington.
right. Him personally, he's never held office of any kind,
Mhm.
and the most like public service he's done is environmental activism, which
Mhm.
has been pretty darn good up to
I
this.
think that that's where his role was and where it should have
Yeah,
stayed, which I
right.
also felt about Ralph Nader back talking about third-party candidates is Ralph Nader stepped out of line when he's like I'm going to get into politics. It's like you were
Right.
good at what you were doing and you were making a difference and then you just you spent Yeah.
Well, isn't that kind of like same thing with Jill Stein to a certain
Oh
extent?
my
Like
God. Yeah.
she was doing a
Mhm.
ton of work outside the political system and then decided to just run for office and fail like
Yeah.
4 times and then go from a local, local town,
Yeah, it's just town meeting. Which I didn't even know was a political thing you
not
could
even
run
like city
for.
council, just like,
It's town meeting is literally what it's called.
oh,
Town meeting. You
I'll
could
call it, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and say it's basically a city council.
probably, I don't know, it's some legislative branch thing, but yeah, she ran for town meeting. There's like 8 seats. She ran against like 16 people and she got like the most votes, but she'd also already ran for governor and Congress. So
Right,
she had some name recognition.
right.
And then she's like, "Yeah, go from town meeting to fucking president." I think she might have tried running for governor again in there.
Mm.
But yeah, again, it's like
Like
what do you
she did a lot of great things and
Yeah.
won like a bunch of environmental awards
Mhm.
and like just being anti-pollution and anti-businesses
Mhm.
allow, just being able to pollute our water and air and
Mhm.
obviously she's a doctor, so like,
I mean,
she's pretty
she's
smart
smart,
and yeah.
yeah, and Ralph Nader's smart. Yeah, RFK. That's the thing. RFK isn't even that smart. Like RFK barely made it through school.
I wouldn't like say like that. I mean, he was a lawyer.
Yeah, he was. He I think failed the bar. I could be. I did a
I don't know.
video on him a
A lot
while
of people
back, and I
fail the
can't.
bar though.
Right,
And then they make it the second or
and
third
then they
time.
yeah, but like I'm almost positive he failed the bar because he got a job lined up. They gave him a job, and then
Uh-huh.
he failed the
Fail the bar.
bar.
Yeah, I mean that happens.
Which is fine. I'm not shitting on that, except for the fact that, like, again, going to the point of if we're going on somebody's intelligence, like, I'm not saying he's dumb, but I'm also like president material.
I mean, I don't know. We got Donald Trump as our president, so
Do you think he was president material?
no. But I think that RFK is infinitely smarter than Donald Trump.
I don't know. I honestly feel like they're susceptible to similar hubris. I feel like
Okay,
they're
but yeah, that's like a
susceptible.
personality flaw. I
Right.
don't. I in
And I feel like they're susceptible to the same conspiracies. I mean, obviously the
right,
vaccine conspiracy is the big one, and they're
right.
both on board with that.
The China virus.
The
That wasn't very good.
that sounded like Gina, like the
China,
vagina virus.
China.
Um, so I don't know. I I'm not a big fan. There's very few third party candidates. I don't know if there's any third party candidate I've ever been a big fan of, honestly. Looking back on it.
Uh,
I like a lot of
right.
their elevator pitch stuff. Again, going
Yeah.
back to the libertarian
Right.
thing. Like, yeah,
Right.
sure, your elevator pitch. Jill Stein, her elevator pitch I thought was pretty decent too.
Sure. Sure.
But then you look at her foreign policy shit and she's fucking horrifying if you were
Right.
to ever put her
The Brexit thing that was
Oh,
hilarious.
God.
And like, the fuck.
Yeah, she supported Brexit because she feels like the EU is like too
to-
corporate capitalism, but it's like that's not why Britain left the
Not
EU.
even a little bit. Other than that, like they were also a little bit tired of like having
to
to
convert the pound to the euro or whatever.
No, it was like a like regulatory, and they wanted to not have to do the EU like safety standard regulations and like just like business regulations. So like if the
Oh.
EU ran like the same like the United States,
Mhm.
we would be in a majorly better position than we
Mhm.
are right now. So like they're like the most, I hate to say progressive
Mhm.
like corporate
Capitalism regulation
capitalism
body.
regulation
yeah.
body because it pains me so much. But they are like in the world the most progressive,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to safety standards.
Mhm.
They're below the U.S. out of the water, and I think a lot of that.
And England or Britain didn't want to have those safety standards as much as part of their
Right,
decision.
they wanted to be able to make their own decisions, and there was the the whole refugee immigration
Mhm.
thing where they were like, yeah, like let's just not let people in out of
Mhm.
these places that are now war torn and have no, basis for basically ruling themselves in
Mhm.
any sort of like modern capacity because we kind of like colonialized them and basically just like fucked up everything about them for the
Mm-hmm.
past 200 years.
Yeah.
Like you said, that was the biggest
That,
reason.
that was that was like those brown people that we fucked up their entire regions for. Now they need some place to go, and we support them having some place to go, just
Right.
not here.
Right.
And the EU is like, no, you gotta take some of them. Everybody in the EU is taking some of these refugees. You gotta take some, especially because you were sort of responsible for setting up the
Yeah,
positions that
not to say they
made
were not the only one, but like they definitely played probably the biggest part for sure.
a not unsubstantial part of it. And they're like,
Yes.
yeah, no, we don't want to do that. We still have most of their stuff in our museums, and
Right.
we're
Yeah.
not done looking at it yet.
No,
So
we still want to keep it, so
mhm.
we're leaving.
So we're gonna leave.
So
And
yeah, that take I don't. That's pretty bad.
honestly,
For
her stuff on Russia really
yeah,
really creeps me out.
like it's one thing to say like we should try to be less adversarial against
Oh,
Russia, and
absolutely.
like her like wanting to not be a part of NATO, I can understand to a certain extent, in that like we sort of created the conditions for
Mhm.
Ukraine war by escalating NATO's position into potential
Mhm.
Ukraine, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons why Russia is trying to
Mhm.
annex Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
So like we are complicit in the situation we're facing right now,
Mhm.
and like if we had not tried to do some of those things, you know, the world would probably be better off.
Yeah, no, there's definitely mistakes we've made along the way.
Right.
We are also where we are today, and just letting Russia be
Right.
like, yeah, and it's the way that she said it too, like that Ukraine was historically part of,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
yeah, sure, the USSR, not Russia. It was never part of Russia. Russia did not exist when Ukraine was. I mean, the USSR and Russia are two different countries.
Right.
So to say that it's historically part of Russia is technically not even accurate, but it gives me
Yeah.
very,
I don't know what the borders were like in the 1700s or anything like
oh,
that.
I mean, if you want to go back, but then again, it's giving the whole, Jerusalem was part of
Right.
Israel vibes, and that's
That's no,
not.
that's true. I got that immediately. I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, yeah, they got historical claim to it. It's like, well,
Uh-huh.
people are still living there right
Yeah, and
now,
they don't want to be a part of that place,
Yeah,
and they have their own
they were
pace.
sort of living there for a
Uh-huh.
while.
And then her whole thing about the Nazis coming to power there and shit, which
Yeah, which is like pretty not accurate.
no, not at all.
There was
Zelensky's Jewish.
see, I mean, yeah,
Anyway, yeah. So again, it's always seems to be one of the like downfalls of third party candidates. Which again, why would you be running as a third party candidate if you didn't have some seriously fucked up views? Because if you can't
right.
if you can't box your views and with pragmatism into one of the two parties, there's something
Yeah, I think
in
it's
in
the
our current.
framing of it. It's like the framing of
Mhm.
the discussion is if you don't frame it in a way that like does fit in either box.
Mhm.
You like what she's, was thinking about like not having being a part of NATO anymore. It's like, well,
Mhm.
if you tease that conversation out more, like there's likely it's on ground that people can agree on. But like if you say it in a weird ass way,
Mhm.
not in a realm of which like has context, then yeah,
Mhm.
you're gonna sound like a fucking weirdo, and it's not gonna come out right.
No. Yeah, well, and like, and how do you do that, especially when you're running for president? How do you be like, no, we're just not
Uh,
going to be in NATO anymore? So it's like, cool, we're just going to let Russia steamroll Europe and
right.
hope that they don't do it to us.
Yeah, and well, especially hard as a third party candidate when you don't get the ability to really speak on some of those
Hmm.
things. Like at most, you'll get like a bunch of like 10, maybe 30. And if you go on podcasts now, I think it's RFK is on like a bajillion
Hmm.
podcasts since he started running, which I think is good
Yeah.
because it allows them to have some long form conversation. But if you go on mainstream media,
Hmm.
you get like 10 minutes of like,
Hmm.
why are you running for president? You
Hmm.
know, I don't understand. Why would you run against the Democrats? It's
Hmm.
like, bro, because I think they blow.
Mm-hmm.
And like these are legitimate issues that
Mm-hmm.
they just don't even consider to
Right.
be in reality. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, oh, I've never considered that issue before because I'm Jake Tapper. And, I get paid to not think about those type of things.
One day we're gonna be on CNN, you know.
Oh, I doubt it. I doubt it.
Jake Tapper's gonna be like, "Hey, I heard that thing you said about me one time."
Yeah, an hour into the podcast, he's like, these fucking guys. All
Yeah,
right. Well, anyways, let's keep going. Let's
yeah.
get through the rest of these. These are candidates that I had that I thought
Mm-hmm.
were interesting. So Dr. Cornel West, this is his first time running for presidency. He started as the People's Party, which is a newer political party, and then he tried to be with the Green Party for a little bit. I don't know why he left necessarily. I just found out about it recently, but now he's running as an independent. If you have not heard anything from Cornel West, you've just seen his photo, you might think he's a crazy person, but he just has a style that's just
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I would highly recommend anybody look into Cornel West and what he's saying. He's got some really good takes on. Yeah, he's looking at his looks right now.
I've definitely seen
Yeah, I
him
mean,
before.
he's been in politics for a long time. He's a huge supporter of Bernie Sanders. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he is legitimately, like, probably one of the most, like, electable and progressive candidates that's out there. I'm not to say that he's any, like,
Mm-hmm.
electable as a president. I just think that he has a really good message, and he like isn't saying anything controversial. He has a really good message.
No, I have not dived deep enough into him to know anything about him and
Yeah,
his
he's like
policies.
huge, like anti-U.S. interventionism
Mm-hmm.
into like foreign countries and starting wars and shit, and like he's obviously anti-mass incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
He's anti-big businesses influencing,
Mm-hmm.
campaigns and campaign finance. So like he's for almost everything that progressives are for. Um, and I think he's worth a look
Yeah.
for something. Obviously, the way that our current system's set up, there's no way in chance he's going to get any votes and anything that's going to matter, which is a disappointment. But
God,
that's
even his Wikipedia page is sparse.
yeah. I mean, he's not like a politician
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. He just is. He's an academic and has been around for a while, but he's been around politics for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because I always like I mean, because I will definitely speak on being anti-interventionalism, but then again, you get that worry of like there is a line.
Oh yeah, I
We have
mean,
we have constructed a world where we are now required to intervene in certain things.
yes, yes. I mean, there's definitely that line, but
And obviously, like I feel like Jill Stein's way on the wrong side of that line. Like I
right.
think that there's we can blow up a lot less countries, but we still like a lot of the world relies on us now for their defense.
Yeah, we have
Um,
like 800 military bases around the world or
hmm
something like that.
and that was our choice. We wanted that,
Yeah,
and now we have that, and now it's like, well, we can't just be like, okay, we changed our mind, go fuck yourself.
I
To a lot of these
mean,
people,
I think that would be a good discussion to have is our just U.S. military
I would
impact around the
let's
world.
yeah, we should definitely do an episode
Um,
on that. I'd be totally down on that because there's a ton of nuance there to talk
There
about.
is obviously I'm on the side of a less
Mm-hmm.
military spending and
Mm-hmm.
less
Oh, absolutely. Let's again if they can lose billions of dollars and be like, I don't know where it went after like
right
8
and
audits
and
or
yeah,
we can cut back on the funding a
right,
tad.
clearly. So
All
highly
right.
recommend Cornel
Mm-hmm.
West. Anybody who's never heard of him, just look up any podcast, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be happily surprised. And then we have the No Labels Party. It's also
Yeah.
a new party that I think they just did a thing in Massachusetts or Connecticut, one of those places up there,
Mm.
and they're trying to get Joe Manchin to run to hopefully siphon some votes from Joe Biden.
Run as president?
Yeah, as president.
Yeah, Joe Manchin ain't gonna do that.
He's definitely not like really on board with it as
No.
of yet. He's pretty apprehensive.
Yeah.
He like spoke at the convention for them,
Mm-hmm.
but he like he was like the main candidate or the main political person there. But
he's
I mean, he's Joe Manchin.
he's Joe Manchin. Like he's not going to siphon any Democratic votes. Like a few
yeah.
people from West Virginia that's never going to vote
Well,
Democrat
he could
anywhere.
siphon some independent votes from people who like are closet conservatives.
There's a possibility. I could see Joe Manchin switching to independent the same way Kristen Sinema did.
Right.
But
well, that's what this would be essentially.
Right. But just to keep running as senator, I don't see him.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't see him ever running for president.
But if you've never heard of the No Labels Party before, I don't blame you. They're pretty new. But
I actually have heard of them.
You have?
I have.
What do you know?
I know that they are pretending to be a third party.
Yes.
And they are really funded by like the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
And shit.
I also found out they were funded by APAC.
Yeah. Well, I mean, literally everything in Washington is funded by APAC. Like APAC is the most bipartisan funding fucking.
They'll give money to anybody.
It's like if you will blow Netanyahu, we will pay you to do it.
If you like look at Netanyahu's face to face, like if you talk to him, they'll pay you.
Yeah, like they pimp hard.
They pay extra.
They pimp hard for Netanyahu. And yeah, so they've got their hand up over half of Washington's ass.
So don't trust the No Labels Party. No, it sounds interesting, but they are up to no good.
And the whole reason they're going with the No Labels Party is because they're trying to
give a perception of independence.
They are, but it is literally, and this is why I was saying that the spoiler effect.
Sure.
Is something I think we need to be more aware of.
Yeah, especially for this election, I would admit this is probably the like so far I have no sense of how it's going to go, and I don't have any real faith that it's going to get better until we get some.
Well, James Killen seemed really
James, he had some real faith.
He has a lot of faith that no one will vote for Donald Trump. Not enough people will vote for Donald Trump in any situation. He thinks he could run against a Cocker Spaniel. He told us that we can bookmark it and we can give him a hard copy of what he said and he will eat it, quite literally, which we would never make him do because he's awesome. But. Right. I still don't share the faith he has, and I wish I did. But 2016 did me dirty, man.
It sure did.
So, which I think, well, you got what, Claudia Dela Cruz here.
Yeah, I got this last one here. So, Party for Socialism and Liberation, or PSL for short. So, Claudia Dela Cruz, they are for socialism. Like basically, they're the Eugene Debs candidate type person, and they are for a couple things that I enjoy. Outlawing corporate lobbying.
That'd be good.
I don't think anybody can really argue that that's sucky. They want to reduce military funding. They actually want to reduce it by 90%. Obviously, I don't think that's feasible.
It's a bit excessive, yeah.
But they also want to end the just like rhetorical standoff between China and Russia. Obviously with Putin in Russia, I think that is a little bit of a weird, I don't think they're like really for that. I think they're more for the China side, and that like we don't need to be so adversarial against China, especially if we want to avoid mass warfare or proxy wars on the Asian continent or Asian side.
Yeah, we definitely need to have a whole episode on that because I feel like there's a lot to talk about.
Absolutely.
With that.
And then I think their most like radical thing that they want to do is they want to seize the
means of production.
Well, yes, they want to seize the means of production by seizing the top 100 corporations in the United States and nationalizing those businesses.
Well, I mean that's the thing that Jill Stein's actually a fan of too.
Sure. Okay.
Which honestly, I don't even know if I'm a fan of that.
I mean, I
think that there's less extreme ways to go about achieving similar things.
Yes, I would be a fan, much more in favor of something like that if they, like I've said before, just focus it mainly on like natural resources
Mm-hmm.
and just like necessity type goods and
Yeah.
needs for
I'd be all for
Americans.
like nationalizing all energy, like the oil
Right.
industry and stuff
Yes.
like
I mean,
that. But
they're
like,
definitely for nationalizing the oil industry, which I have no issues with. And so there's certain aspects of that party and
mm-hmm.
that socialism that
But
I
yeah.
can I'll go to bat
Mm-hmm.
for all day, but seizing the top 100 U.S.
Yeah. No,
corporations, I don't
and
know.
I think we could achieve the same stuff with just reinstating high marginal tax rates on
Right,
the
and
wealthy
they're
and
not going to be able to do
corporations.
something like
Mm-hmm.
that
No,
and
you'd
still have our current
never
system.
ever get that. You'd never get elected on that, let alone get it through Congress or get it passed. I mean, it's just
Right.
it's a nice thought, you
But
know.
I just wanted to bring her up because I want to have
Mm-hmm.
a socialist candidate in there.
Oh, absolutely. Um, and now that you said that you should pay attention to Dr. Cornell West and you like all the things that he has to say, this is why you should absolutely not fucking vote for him.
Yes, I do have to admit I don't see the point currently with the way that our political system and our voting system is set up. There just really is not a point to voting for a third party candidate. I can't endorse it.
No, like, and the problem is that there's no statistical way. I mean, there's no hope. There's no with the way that our electoral college is set up, and uh, there's no mathematical way for a
Yeah,
third party candidate to win a national election. Now, if you want to go start pushing your third party candidates at a local level and a state level, um, then sure, there's some ways there. And
absolutely.
Nick Powers, I forgot I was gonna get his stats on this for this, and I forgot about it because we actually planned this episode ahead of time and then moved it around. But Nick Powers on TikTok has some really great stuff on why you shouldn't vote third party, and he's as
Hmm.
progressive, if not more progressive, than me
I'll
and
definitely check him out.
Taylor. But yeah, he goes through and he does spreadsheets, and all of his spreadsheets are just
Oh,
like
is he
here.
the spreadsheet guy?
Yeah,
Oh
he's
yeah, love that guy.
uh-huh. And so he's done it on the third party stuff, and he's gone through every conceivable scenario,
Sure.
and there's no way a third party can win.
Right.
And not only is there no way a third party can win, um they they can't do it in a way that your protest vote is only going to end up fucking you over, because the things that you are voting for your third party candidate to do, you're taking away from the candidate that you may not like, but is going to be more in line than the opposing candidate that you would normally vote for.
Right. If you're ranking them, right, you go in
Mm-hmm.
third party, and for us, we'd say Democrat and then
Mm-hmm.
Republican. Voting third party in our current system would basically be giving a vote to Republicans instead of for us voting for Joe Biden.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and it sucks. It does suck. The hold your nose and vote thing is
Yeah.
a common trope, but it's true.
It's true because it's necessary the way
Mm-hmm.
that the Electoral College works, and in that it works with winner take all voting style.
Um. So and here I even had John Anderson, who was a Republican prior to running in 1980, still drew more support from Carter than he did from Reagan, and it's that you need to consider, is like, even when it's libertarians or it's former conservatives, you're a lot more likely to find discontent with the people that are on your side, more or less,
Mhm.
who are going to vote that third party candidate regardless of what their actual views are.
Right.
And then you end up with a Ronald Reagan, or you end up with
Sure.
a George Bush, or I don't think that third party really came into effect with Donald Trump, but it could, as close as these elections get now.
True. It's true.
And George Wallace, here I had these numbers too. I forgot to put them in here.
Good job.
10 million votes he took, easily could have swayed the election. Nixon won by 550,000 popular votes, and Wallace carried the traditionally Democratic states of the South, with the exception of Texas and Florida. So 10 million votes that Well, you said he got 10 million votes that he got.
Yeah.
And Nixon won by 550,000 on the popular side, and the states that would have traditionally voted Democrat or had traditionally voted Democrat before that went to Wallace. So like
Sure.
that definitely could have been a spoiler. So I lied a little bit earlier on when I said that I didn't think other than.
But, it's also tough to say Democratic votes in the South. You
Mhm.
never know, especially back then.
Well, that was the party switch election. So,
Right, so,
like,
like
yeah, it's hard to say they may have gone red instead, but Texas stayed blue that election.
Sure.
And Florida went red, the rest went Wallace. So
Yeah.
had even one or two of those states stayed blue, which they traditionally were at that point. Um
Right.
who knows what would have happened, and that's the damage that we worry about with what RFK or Jill Stein could do, because incumbents tend to win elections,
Yep.
uh,
Absolutely.
as in a strong economy, but we're in uncharted territory in difficult times, and we've talked about this before, but the economy might be doing well on paper, but it hasn't been doing well for regular Americans for a
No.
long time. Biden's approval ratings are pretty low. Obviously, um, with what's going on in the Middle East, there's a lot of tension with the
Yes.
younger voters on how they feel. The U.S. is handling that, and that may cause them to sit out or vote third party.
Right. I don't see them voting for Trump at
No,
all, but that definitely they would more than likely just sit at home.
sit out or vote for Jill Stein,
Right.
or maybe vote for RFK. I mean, RFK may pull some of the far
Yeah,
right
I think
because it's
RFK has the
Mhm,
potential this time around to be the third party candidate that pulls some
mhm,
votes. I don't know if he has enough at all to even
mhm.
win a single state. I would guess no,
Yep,
but
yep, and
he could pull
that's.
some votes in specific key states.
Mhm.
And as of right now, the way that our system is set up, some of those swing states, it is just a couple thousand votes in a couple districts that can swing the entire state.
Mhm.
It can literally come down to something that small.
Well, I mean, that's again what happened with the 2016 election. It was a few thousand votes
Right.
in a few states that
Yeah.
decided it. Um, and so that's like the frustrating thing is like, yeah, I get it. You hate Biden, like cool. Like
Yeah.
I understand it.
Yeah.
Do you
Totally.
think Trump is going to suit your needs better? Because that's the genuine
Right.
question you have to ask yourself. Do you hate Biden's response to Israel and Palestine? Great. Do you think Trump is going to handle that at all, even remotely better? Like, think
No.
about how bad Biden is handling it,
Right.
and think about how much fucking worse
Right. Right.
Trump would handle it. Um, you know, uh, if you're mad about how he didn't stack the court or enshrine abortion rights when we had the chance to do that, which I'm frustrated about,
Yeah.
is Trump
Absolutely.
going to help those things? Is that going to make that situation better? Is that going to push us in the right direction, or at least hold us from going in the wrong
No, as
direction?
far as I can tell, if Trump gets elected, like
Mhm.
a good portion of Project 2025 actually
Oh,
happens.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so it may not get better voting for Biden, but if you don't vote for
Yeah.
Biden,
It absolutely will get worse.
yeah. And that
I
sucks. It sucks to
hate
fucking
having to
say.
be the person that says
It
that.
really
Like,
it does. It does. And I hate to say it because like again, I am not a big Biden stan or anything, but it, we
yeah.
saw what can happen
Yeah,
and what
no,
will
and
happen, and
that's
this
the
is.
reality that we live in right now.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be striving for something
No, we should
different, but
absolutely be striving for something different.
and there are ways to work towards that, but
Yeah.
the option right now is not third party voting. It's not protest voting.
Yeah.
It's electing candidates on state and local levels that share your ideologies, that share your passions, that share the things that you want, regardless of their party. If
Yeah.
they fit the bill and you can get
Right.
them, they will start to change your party. They will move that over to window,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
You can annoy your representatives, write them, email them, tell them the shit that you
You can.
want to see the change. And I know you feel like it doesn't do anything, and a lot of times it doesn't, but it does if you get enough people. They pay attention because they still have to win their next election.
Right.
Nobody's seat is 100% safe.
No, absolutely not.
Um, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's ranked choice voting, which would
Mm-hmm.
immensely help with stuff like this.
And that's getting done on the lower levels
All right,
and in
it's
places.
starting from grassroots for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And then, like I said, obviously, uh, you could just get rid of the electoral college, but if you're going to keep it, at
Mm-hmm.
least get rid of winner take all, which
Mm-hmm.
effectively like nullifies the problems with the electoral college to
It
some extent.
reduces them,
Right.
yeah. I mean, it still reduces the power of certain people's votes, but it's not.
Well, right. Those 40, huge millions of people in Texas and all the states that are
Mm-hmm.
just like write offs now, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
New York, California,
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, Texas, and obviously a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, their votes don't count right now if you're not in part of the majority, which is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless of your party, like if you're a Republican, I might think you're an idiot, but I still think your vote should count.
Right.
You
The whole
know.
point of the democracy is that
Mm-hmm.
we believe that everybody should get a vote and people should be
Mm-hmm.
more able to make their vote meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
We like the democracy.
Yep.
It's the best that we can do right now.
Mm-hmm. And to be real, the people who are going to be the least hostile to making those changes, even if you are a Republican and you want your vote to count more, because I hate to tell you, but it's not going your way long term, which I guess is why they're trying to do everything to make
Right.
democracy not work.
They're trying to take away the ability for democracy to work efficiently and work at all and just
Mm-hmm.
basically move us as far as we
Mm-hmm.
can to an authoritarian state.
But as soon as that happens, then it doesn't matter what your political ideologies are. They're not going to care about your vote or what
No.
you care about, because as soon as they make it so they don't need the votes, which is what they're working towards, and
Right. If
then
you look at Project
hmm
2025, there's nothing about that screams like we want to give people the option to
no.
vote. And we
uh,
want to give people more freedoms.
so so I guess we'll leave you with this. I hate to be the one to say shut up and vote for Biden, um, because
Well, don't shut up, but vote for
yeah,
Biden.
don't shut up, but don't vote third party until we have a viable path to
Right.
third party candidates getting elected.
A statistical likelihood of
Hmm.
them possibly.
Ranked choice voting. Do not vote third party in a national election until we have ranked choice voting, where you are not kneecapping the the greater good or the lesser of two evils for
Right.
your ideologies, and
And
it's
or winner take all,
mm-hmm,
elections, or the electoral college. Like
absolutely,
those. I
like
feel like those three
mm-hmm,
things are, if you're not gonna impact
mm-hmm,
climate or not climate change, campaign financing
mm-hmm.
and corporate lobbyists, this is the way that we get it done, and this is a way that we can actually do it by basically demanding our states to you know change the way that they do the
And your
voting.
state can change it from winner take all. There are some states that do that, and they can divide up their electoral votes
Right.
according to the percentage that the state
Yeah.
voted
I mean, that's the
to each
minimum.
candidate.
That's the
Yep,
minimum.
and that's the minimum, and that is something that is your state's choice. You can push your state to
And
do that.
they can choose to do ranked
Mhm.
choice voting too.
They can. So it comes from the state level, and I know that it's frustrating, and it's just easy to go, check your protest vote off at the voting booth. But if you actually give a shit, it's going to take more than that. And if you don't give a shit, then you need to vote for the party that's not going to burn everything to the ground at this point, while the rest of people who are willing to put in the work take the time to figure it out and try to get the options that we all want and the solutions that we all want available for the rest of us to vote for, you know.
Right.
And
Well, I feel like those are the best things we can do right now,
mhm.
at least at a state level specifically, and states tend to be more fluid.
States are where it happens, man. It really is. We spend a lot of time talking about the national stuff, but states are where it happens. Focus on your state level stuff. Vote in every fucking election
Every year, baby.
you have the opportunities to vote in, um and uh and yeah, just be smart about it. We're all in this together, and We've gone way over again. This is just officially like an hour and a half-ish plus podcast at this point. We're done trying to make it a 45-minute to an hour.
Maybe we should just care less. I don't know.
And we should care less and drink more.
Yep, maybe that's the problem. Totally.
All right, guys. Till next time, we love you. Check us out on all the socials. We got a Let Them Eat Toast Facebook page now, an Instagram, a TikTok. We're slowly working on getting more invested in actually posting stuff on them, but check those out. Follow Off Jawagon. We've got merch on offjawagon.com. And
we are working on a Patreon page.
Yep.
So we'll let you guys know when that's set up and get you guys some merch, membership, a few extra perks, do some fun stuff, and hope to get you guys more engaged.
Yeah. Well, we love y'all. Thanks for hanging around this long while we stumbled our way through this one, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in.